at a longer timetable, it could be until the midterm elections in 2 years. There could be a flip. There's usually a flip either in Congress or Senate. And it could be 4 years after that, or it could be 20, 25 years. This could be a generational thing that we're never going to stop fighting for the return of the Black Hills. I know that when I was a child that my parents and family were fighting for the return of the Black Hills when I was a kid, and we're still continuing that fight today. So this is our generation's time and effort. And if we are not successful, but I believe we will be, but if we are not, we have a generation of people behind us who are going to have those same values, who are going to believe that this land is not for sale and that it should be returned to the Lakota people. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Have a few more minutes. We have a few more, some leadership here that have arrived from Standing Rock. I'm going to allow them some time to give a welcome here. Right now, I'll pass it on, Mr. Richard.
Richard Long for the Washichu Chazeki Hemachab na Lakot Chazeki Teo Hitika Machab Le Iwasla El Watina I'm Richard Longfeather, born and raised here in Standing Rock, and I'm a councilman at large.
Oh, thank you. Have another councilman here, Mr. Sidney Bailey Jr. Allow him give some time to give a welcome here.
Good morning. My name is Sidney Bailey Jr. I represent the Long Soldier District right there in Fort Yates there. Welcome you guys all here to Standing Rock. You know, I've been to a lot of treaty meetings and down in Rapid City area and so forth, and to educate myself more on, you know, with the Black Hills. Got to remember faces. Bill Means himself, I love listening to him at times, you know, and because he was in the fight all of these years for the Black Hills. So, you know, he's a good person to learn from. I've just sat down with him and I've asked him, you know, like about how can we put a packet together that we can get into our schools. And maybe we can start building our young into being our future lawyers to help us with this. You know, if we start them young and they grasp it and they want that interest and they pursue it in college and they come back and, you know, they may be able to see it in a different way than what we've always been looking at it and stuff. And they may be able to use it to help us to get our Black Hills back. But, you know, I'm open to anybody to point me in a direction so I can get, you know, look at some of the information. Bill's saying that there is some out there, instead of dust them off the shelves and probably incorporate them into our schools. So, you know, we have that, you know, that's just as important as what we're doing here is to educate our young, to educate them to know that it was fraud that was committed against us, and they took our land. So, you know, I feel that it's important that we go ahead and we get the materials and dust them off and get them into our schools and educate our young so they know what Bill was fighting for all of these years. We know what we all been fighting for, and that we want our Black Hills back. We don't want the money, we want our Black Hills back. But thank you guys for all coming, and hope you guys enjoy your time here, and I hope that, yes, we have Mr. Starr comes out and talks about the project 2025, and we have a fight against us, and we better prepare in any way that we can. And the way to do it is we do it together. we can't do it alone. We have to come together, and we have to put our minds together. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Right now, we're going to go into our agenda here. We're going to pass it on over here to Jody Archambault.
Hamitakepi, Chante Washtea Napechizapi, Jody Archambault at Machapi, Yawasaha Hemataha. Good morning, everyone. Greet you with a warm handshake and a good heart. I'm here standing in my own capacity as a Lakota Ria, and I'm really thankful for everyone to be here today. As our people gather, I just want to say that I started working on this issue from, I think, when I was like really young, and mostly it was like just in the form of research, because where I grew up in Pejutahaka in Kyle, South Dakota, and you couldn't go to any place on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation where I grew up, and everybody talked about the Black Hills, and everybody talked about that they weren't for sale at powwows, at the school events. The elders really pushed for us to understand that, and so when I was small, I didn't really know any different, that there was any other kind of conversation that was happening. And we grew up in a different era before there was any kind of like Facebook. You know, people kind of had TVs, but mostly, you know, we just played outside and got to go to the hills once in a while. But been working on this particular effort for a while now, and I just wanted to start off and say that I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not somebody who practices law or anything like that. This is all, I'm speaking from just a ICJ perspective of what this is, and that I think that this legal part of the discussion gets really confusing. So first of all, I want to say that the drafting committee, I'm a part of 3 committees, and I participated in the drafting committee of this effort for off and on for the past, I guess, calendar year, since January. And in May, we stopped meeting. And so the update for the elders and for people who came to the last meeting is that the draft of the bill has not been altered. It's pretty much the same as it was in May. And the reason that we took a pause on the drafting is that there was an understanding or an acknowledgement that we have to work with the tribal governments before we go any further. So the tribal governments, the people who are here, the Ogallala Sioux Tribe, the Rosebud Sioux Tribe, Standing Rock, Cheyenne River, there has to be a partnership that's brought in, and but I'm really proud of the work that's been done so far, because most of it has been done. How it started off was that the Bradley bill that Senator Bradley had begun to introduce and move in the Senate. That's what that language was what the folks started with, and the people who worked on the first drafts were the Black Hills Steering Committee from the Ogallala Sioux Tribe. So some of those folks are here, but it was Lakshee Richard Broken Nose, Lakshee Bill Means, Lakshee Rick Two Dogs, Lakshee Richard Moves Camp, and there was one more Richard. There's 3 Richards. Broken Nose. And so the first draft that came out was their reactions to the Bradley bill. And so this is not the Bradley bill. This is from the input from the Black Hills Steering Committee, and then anybody who wanted to join the drafting committee for we met weekly and talked about different provisions in the bill. And the draft bill was sent to all of the tribes and their legal counsel. And we know that that's a process that wasn't, there wasn't a clear connection or a clear direction from the tribes to have the lawyers really take a look at it. And so we put this on pause because we put this drafting process on pause until we got the tribes to be more involved in the process. And the reason for that is because the United States doesn't really recognize anybody but the IRA governments, or the governments that are the ones that I mentioned, the successors of the Great Sioux Nation. And so this bill, and many of you have been able to get a copy of it. It's a draft. And so I wanted to clarify that we're going to start meeting again. And if you want to be a part of the drafting process, we're going to start meeting, and we're hoping that the tribes who are supportive will be able to direct their legal counsels to also participate. Because at the end of the day, this is going to have to be a partnership between the treaty councils and the elders and the tribes. And then we haven't even started talking to the United States yet. So I want it to make crystal clear that the resolutions that we're asking people to support, and this is going to come out with the Education and Outreach Committee report, but these are supporting the idea of a legislation. So the idea of a bill. It isn't necessarily the exact language of this, because we know that the legal counsels have to review this and take a look at it. So this is the idea of it, but this is actually, this is a draft language, but it's not tied directly to this. So if you look at the language in this, it says passing the idea of legislation. And the reason that we need to be careful about how we tie up the tribes here is that we know that it's going to take time and it's going to take a lot of effort to connect everyone's lawyers. But I will say that, here at Standing Rock, because of the leadership of Oceti Cedric, and because of the leadership at the tribe, at the judicial committee, and at the tribal council, that we have supported this, and then also the Rosebud Sioux Tribe is also in support of it by resolution. And through that, we will begin to pick up the drafting committee. Tracy Zephyr is the chairwoman. She's not able to be here today, but we are also looking for everyone. I think Manny's participated quite a bit, Manny Red Bear. And there's others who have been participating with it, and so it's we have if we don't have your emails, and if you want to participate and you don't have email, let me know. And if at the end of this meeting, if you want to just return an email to Billy Joe, the healer, we can also add you to the lists where we're going to get together and start doing this. It's on Zoom. It's usually in the evenings, and it's not we just go through the provisions section by section. So you have the bill in front of you, so I'm not going to go through the summary of it. It's a draft. We're still working on it. And primarily the big parts that are sticky, we're going to need more help on and it doesn't mean that we're not going to change it, but we need to have more help from the tribes in how they direct their legal counsels in the review process. And then after this, I think Holly is going to talk about the climate. She's going to give a brief on the climate of Congress. And I just wanted to say, two things about why Congress. And so this is just my opinion. And I know many of you know that I used to work at the White House for Obama. In my opinion, from my experience, my opinion is that our Black Hills will come back to us when it's time. And that I believe that if we are together and we're unified, that we will get our Black Hills back. And that it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. But at the same time, we've been through worse, and I think that working together to create unity around this is the most important work we can be doing for our grandchildren. I know that there's some people who think that that it's easier to go a different route, but like maybe go to the UN. And I have a lot of respect for the United Nations, but I don't remember them helping people get their land back. I mean, I don't remember them. I haven't seen a process work like that. I have seen Congress return land to Indian people in the past, and so I'm going based on what my experience was. The most recent thing that I look at is the return of the bison range in CSKT, the Salish Kootenai, but different tribes bring their return of lands to Congress. And I worked on a handful of them when I was in the administration, and their tribe they're not going to give it to us. They're not going to do the right thing. We have to make them, we have to push them, we have to make them accountable, and we have to stand united. And so I just wanted to say that, I'm supportive of the people who want to go to the UN and bring this issue there. That's important work too, because that pressure can lead Congress and the president to take action. That's important. But I think, the work of us that we have today is to continue working on a draft bill. And if we don't work on a draft bill, then we're just talking. We're not actually moving and working to do something. The last thing that I was going to say is that the work of the tribes to do the MOU with the Forest Service, I know Mark touched on the co-management. The co-management is important, and it is something that the tribes are positioned to work on. And the work that we have here is complementary to that. It's not in opposition. It's all good. It's whoever's doing something on the Black Hills to build our expertise, to build our work there and our time there. I think it's really important. And just want to thank you all for coming. I know a lot of you traveled for a long ways. And when we get to the other section, I'll be here all day to if you want to come up and talk about the drafting committee or anything, then I'm here. And at this point, I want to turn it over to Holly Cook-Macaro to give the legislative briefing, if she can get it up on her screen. 1 second. Does any of the other members of the drafting committee want to add? Okay, the members of the drafting committee, Manny, you're part of that drafting committee. Manny Red Bear, Ironhawk, sorry, Manny, Ironhawk, sorry. I'm mixing up my Itantra. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
Oha, pilama ya pelo. Petiki aste yuha yukpia wa chiakapi. Na hechitu wola kota ogana unyapik. Naha ahani wotakia wakian chankap chashna. Poski kchuna na cha. Tena le apetuki wabalakish. Wahe ha tiwahe ki cheki chapi. Ahe wikfi petik. Na yokpia wahi dokiloki hika woakie wachi. Na mo ku wagluha. Ja hena I dokiloki hika wicho hokata kia ekte. Na wochekia ogna noji piti. Na le Sapa kile wachakia. Ukiet pishni. Wakaja na kakoja ki epi. Na lehan waji yaglans pepikte. Tako yakia kapikte. Ki ija wana Gobcha Kinajiki. So Nakun Tokha Ash. He Washi Wakyak. Opeti Yohi Lashna, Taku Yakik. He Wana Ija Inajiki. Na Wana Ija Chetabaki Kuakt. How relatives, it's good to see you today. Back in the day, when relatives met, they hugged and they even cried. I think that part of the time is gone. Very few places we greet each other like that. And I want you to think about this chetapa. It's going to be our children and our grandchildren. That's not going to be us. But I think some of the people, for some reason, they don't think about the generations. We were all part of a generation. And chetapa, and like the other speakers said, I don't know how long it's going to take, but we are going to get it back. And I always said, if we get the Black Hills back, there's going to be a great social change. What does that look like? And at Wakpawaste, the City Council, we try to work with everybody because unity is so important. Our ancestors had it. What does it look like today? So if people really cared and prioritized it, they will be here today. It's that important. So I have a few things. Now is not the time to fall apart. If we have questions, I think we need to ask. We need to bring them out. So maybe we can have some solutions. But the important thing is this bill has to go through. Maybe it will be rejected, but it will be there for others to continue to fight for it. Just like relatives, we cannot neglect relatives. We have to include them. So it's our relatives, we have to do education. This council rep said education, and I think he's right. Let's make some chetapa curriculum. Put it to our schools because they need to know, along with our history. The language is there, I think, but our history, our specific history needs to be addressed too. Our children need to know where they come from. I think that's the most important thing. So that's all I'm going to say today, and I want to thank you to come today and be a part of this meeting and be as helpful as I can. Pilamaya.
Opila. Yeah. Do you want me to just take it over? Okay.
Ani buju waginikijgo kwen dijinakaz makwa nindo dem masquagami wizagaganing and donjaba. My name is in English Holly Cook Macau, and I'm from the Red Lake Band of Ojibwe in northern Minnesota, and I do government affairs for Indian. Today I'm going to go over, I missed the Thursday team leader meeting last week, but they asked if I would put together a presentation that went kind of through the results of the 2024 election, which most of us are familiar with, so I'll be brief. And then what 2025 looks like for us both, just the political landscape and for our efforts on introducing the return of the Sapa bill. So, can you change, Shante, can you change this now? Thank you. Well, as we all know, in the results of the presidential race, we will have a new president at noon on January 20th. I don't want to have my back to anyone here. At noon on January 20th. And in the United States Senate, 1/3 of the Senate is up every 2 years. So this was a year that 34 of the 100 Senate seats were up for election. Sorry, trying not to get this echo. In the House of Representatives, the entire House of Representatives was up for re-election, all 435 seats. Only a very few of those were competitive, which is why you don't hear about 435 House races. There's just a handful that are actually competitive. Most of them are incumbents in very safe seats that won re-election. I'll talk a little bit more about the House split and what that means for us. In the governors or gubernatorial races, there were 11 states that elected governors. That is usually, I always watch those races. It's a good indicator of who might be the next senator from that state, or who might be the next candidate for president. So you can go to the next one, Shante. The presidential race, it was a very decisive victory by Donald Trump. He will be sworn in as the 47th president. I think he's only the second one to serve as in kind of separate terms, but he can only serve one more term. So per the Constitution, a president can only serve 2 terms, whether they're consecutive or not. So he will be a one-term president. And so we will have in 4 years another presidential election. As of today, or actually this was last night, he had 312 electoral votes. He also won the popular vote, which I think was a surprise to a lot of folks, but I think the messaging of the Democratic Party, of which I am a member, either people just don't believe in the same things we do, or just there's got to be a lot of work done on the key messaging. All of the key battleground states went to Trump, and he flipped all of the battleground states from blue to red, except North Carolina, which was red in 2020. I do want to say that in spite of the loss, I think this was an extraordinary year for the Native vote in the United States. It received, I think, a lot of attention. It was extraordinarily resourced. We had Indian people in the field that were running Native geotech operations. We really, I think we're beginning to see doing it ourselves instead of having white people come in and do, here, let's get out the vote on the Indian reservations. I really saw a lot more of our own people in this infrastructure, and that will really be something that we can build on in, 2028. The next one, please. So in the U.S. Senate, and this will be really key for us, as I said, 34 were up for re-election. As of last night, it's going to be a majority of 53, possibly 54 Republicans, with 44 Democrats and 2 independents. Those 2 independents caucus with the Democrats, so you really count the split there as 46, 54. The key races that flipped in Montana, we saw Tim Sheehy beat John Tester. John Tester was a longtime member of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, a real ally and fighter for Indian country. That will be a loss for us, particularly because he is one of a long line of senators from the state of Montana who took their responsibilities to represent the very large Native American constituency in that state seriously, choosing to serve on the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, taking up our issues, not only fighting for the tribes of Montana, but for tribes all across the country. And he's being replaced with a man who referred to the best time to meet with Indians was 8 a.m. in the morning when they were still drunk, and refused to apologize. And so that is the attitude and opinion and view of the man who's replaced John Tester of Native Americans in that state. So there's obviously room to grow. I don't know that Tim Sheehy will ever meet the bar of the sort of ally in the very strong history of Indian country supporters that we've had from the state of Montana. In West Virginia, this Joe Manchin, long considered the last Democrat that could represent that state, which is very red otherwise. He retired and is being replaced by Jim Justice. The Ohio race was very, very close. Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown. In Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick defeated incumbent Bob Casey. I would say for Indian country, as Democrats, and a lot of times we hold the Democratic caucus as a whole on tribal issues, the West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania seats being less impactful to Indian country than the loss of Tester in Montana because of his high-profile role as an ally. And I just asked Jody and Anissa and Shantae to monitor if anybody has breaking news on their phone while I'm up here. But as we speak, the Senate Republicans are voting to select their next majority leader to replace longtime leader McConnell from Kentucky, who is retiring. And as many of you know, Senator John Thune is a top contender to become the next majority leader. He has been actively opposed in the last few days by Trump allies, and who made a big push for Rick Scott, who was long seen as a very long shot. This race had always been between John Thune and John Cornyn from Texas. I think it really is coming down to the wire. Thune was making some efforts, I think, in the last 24 hours to appease the Trump allies, that he really was MAGA enough for them and as much of a Trump ally and less establishment. So we should be finding out any minute. So if anyone is watching their phones or sees it before I do while I'm up here, please let us know who the next majority leader will be. That will have a big impact on the work that we're doing here. If the Republicans have control of the Senate, the president-elect will have more power, a little bit more wiggle room in the Senate than President Biden did in terms of the breakdown. It is still not what they call a filibuster-proof majority, which requires 60 votes in order to overcome a filibuster. So it still means that bipartisan legislation will still be the best way to go in the United States Senate, but there is more wiggle room there with this 53-54. In the House of Representatives, currently, as of today, you need 218 to hold the majority in the House of Representatives. There are still some outstanding races to be called. I think most of them competitive races, most of them in California. As of last night, the Republicans held 214 seats. The Democrats held 205. I think there's more than 16 races still waiting for results. It might be 16 competitive races. On that, there's information there on the key races that were flipped. A key race that Indian country is still waiting for is Congresswoman Mary Peltola from Alaska, where ranked choice voting really helped her first election. And in this election, it's a little bit tougher for her. We're waiting for those results against Nick Begich, who is in the lead there. Today is also, no, it's not today. The Speaker of the House They will be holding their elections very short. Is it today? I can't remember if they certify or. But he's not expected to face any serious opposition. There's going to be grumblings from the more conservative wing of the House, but Speaker Johnson is very likely is expected to be reelected in the House. I'll talk more about kind of impacts overall once I get through this summary here. We can go to the next one, Shante. Thank you. Possible impacts, obviously impacts on the Supreme Court, which affect Indian country directly because of our direct government-to-government relationship with the federal government and the kind of direct line these decisions have on Indian country. So Supreme Court appointments are of huge consideration. There was a lot of discussion over the past few months, and then with the results of the election, there was concern over the health of Justice Sotomayor. She has diabetes and she's 70, and so they're thinking, well, she might not make it through a Trump term, and so they want to make sure that a Democratic president gets the opportunity to replace her. None of that chatter, I think, has moved any of the sitting justices to announce a retirement. I think it would be a very, very iffy situation if any of the justices announced their retirement, given the shenanigans we saw when Merrick Garland was announced, and they just wouldn't move on his nomination. So it seems safest at this point, and that we pray for the health of the justices on the Supreme Court. This was the Trump administration picks as of 9:57 a.m. this morning, and I put that time because he's going through them very quickly. I don't know if it's been today's week, right? Today Tuesday, or today Wednesday. So it has been a week since we got the election results, and this is an extraordinarily quick number of appointments and announcements to the U.S. cabinet or the president's cabinet. He's announced former Congressman from New York, Lee Zeldin, to head the EPA. The UN Ambassador, Elise Stefanik, the Border Czar, Tom Homan, former acting ICE Director, Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Notably for all of us here, Governor Kristi Noem will be in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, which is also ICE, the Border Patrol, Secret Service, so many other divisions, really rounding out the president's border security team when he announced the appointment of Governor Kristi Noem. The National Security Advisor will be Representative Mike Waltz, the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who is, I think, an Army veteran and a Fox News anchor. The White House Chief of Staff will be Susie Wiles, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Elon Musk, and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to head up a new Department of Government Efficiency. Unknown exactly what that will cover, or jurisdiction, or funding, or what might be folded into that, but I have a feeling we should all be concerned. I will say that the appointment of Susie Wiles and this campaign that was run this time, it wasn't a surprise to them this time that they won, right? He had a team of professionals. They had a plan. They worked for 4 years. Susie Wiles, I think, is regarded on all sides as a real professional and who runs a very tight ship. We see that. I think I saw that throughout the campaign and the way the campaign was run, which was very, very different. I think that in the first Trump administration, Indian country, to some degree, I thought suffered from benign neglect. He was, so caught off guard by the fact that he won, and then had so many other things going on that the political appointees at the Department of Interior really led the way and were free with the decision making there, with little oversight from the White House, unless there was political pressure on specific items like Mashpee Wampanoag, their recognition, and a couple of land deals that Secretary Zinke was later indicted for. So I think that in terms of those appointments and their impact as we move forward, Indian country, I think there may be more of a focus, and I think we should all be very concerned about the rollback of regulations in mining, in fee to trust, all of those pieces, and the role the cities and the states in our fee to trust process, and land back in general. These are a few of the priorities. I think, one of the opportunities here that we see is the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017. It's been the Trump tax structure that we've been living under. It's expected now that will be extended. There are some tax provisions in Indian country I think that we will all be working towards, and that could be one bright spot. The border security, where he's already talking about the mass deportations and exactly what that will look like. I expect that new cabinet secretary Noam will play a very high profile role there. Repealing parts of the Inflation Reduction Act could have a real impact on Indian country because of the $30 billion of direct funding that went to Indian country, and then the additional, I think it was 40, that tribes were eligible as part of a larger group. It wasn't tribal specific funding to apply for. And so much of that has been, as many of you know, it's been very slow to get out. And so in looking at the budget and the spending bills, there are real efforts on the Republican side of the aisle to do what they call claw back, which is literally like claw back some of those funds if they're unspent. So I think we will see an effort by the Biden administration in the next, I think we have 10 weeks or 10 weeks from yesterday until the new administration takes over. So we've got 10 weeks to get a lot of money out the door. Next one. Kind of went through, so the administration, Congress, we controlled by the GOP. At the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, and this was real key for us because that was where our focus was and hopes of getting the bill introduced, given the Republican control of the House and our feedback from House Resources that we wouldn't get a hearing there out of the Public Lands Bill, Public Lands Committee. But John Tester was not reelected. The next chairs possibly, and this is based on seniority, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who has been a great partner to Indian country, Hovind from North Dakota, or Daines from Montana. I do expect that Brian Schatz from Hawaii will remain. They call them, most committees are chair and ranking member, but Senator Inouye, when he was, and I think, and John McCain, when they were alternating between legislative issues in Indian country are bipartisan. So the Brian Schatz from Hawaii, I expect that he will continue as the vice chair, the top-ranking Democrat on that committee, and mostly because the state of Hawaii has always prioritized having a seat on the Indian Affairs Committee to protect the interests of the Native Hawaiians as well. It is a real. It's going the House Natural Resources and then the Indian Affairs Subcommittee. It will be Republican leadership. There's going to be some shuffling that will remain to be seen over the coming weeks. Representative Grijalva remains the senior Democrat, and he is a friend and ally, and is one that we were looking for to be a potential original co-sponsor and to introduce the Sapa bill. So he has announced that this will be his last term, though. He was diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. He spent several months at home, and he is making a run to continue to be the ranking member on the House Natural Resources Committee. Jared Huffman, who is behind him in seniority, Northern California Democrat, is making noise that he's not well enough to continue to be the chair, but there's so much love and respect for Congressman Grijalva in the House of Representatives that's not landing very well. So I expect that Grijalva will continue to be the ranking Democrat. And these are the key dates that we have to look forward to. January 3rd is when Congress reconvenes. January 6th, that very famous date now, is when Congress will certify the election results, and January 20th, 2025 at noon is when the transfer of power will take place and Trump will be sworn in as the next president. So that's the end of my presentation, but I did want to make some brief remarks about what this looks like in terms of the introduction of our bill. We have the draft bill as Jody gave the update on, and we're looking for some feedback on that bill in order to ensure that we get what they call a referral to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs and not over the Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. We will do the same in the House, but with Republican control, it's going to be much more difficult. And I think there's going to be some discussion on this that Jody's leading also.
Just fill them out, and then that'd be nice.
Testing, there we go. I thought I was getting the hook.
Keeps going up.
In terms of our next steps and what bill introduction looks like, I think we have some time. This new Congress with the new majorities, it's going to take a few months for everything to get settled. We look at who the new best allies are, and so then we get the feedback on a draft bill as long as we're ready. But the sort of pressure that we were under to kind of get a bill introduced and get a hearing done so that we get administration comments, that's really off the table now. We've got a little bit of time, but to the extent that we need that time, right? To make sure that everybody, as Jody said, has had the chance to weigh in, look at the language. We need the feedback. We've got to look at have that kind of pass back and forth with legislative staff after the bill is finalized within the communities here. And it felt a little rushed, as if we were always up against, the end of this administration. But as I've always said, I've worked on several presidential campaigns, and the first one broke my heart in 2000, and that was back when I thought Bush was as bad as it could get, and he seemed so benign right now, right? Those were the days. And then the loss in 2016. So what I have learned from that is nothing in politics is permanent. The pendulum always swings back and forth. And so while it seems as if, this is a dark time in terms of the priorities that Indian country has put forth, now is not the time to give up, as you said. And this is the time that we get to work, and we take this time, I think, to get the feedback, to engage our youth in this conversation and make sure that we are putting forth a bill that will be universally supported by the tribes, and that when we are ready for that introduction, we've done the mapping, we've had the technical assistance, we've done those pieces, and we're as ready as we can possibly be to take that fight, not here, but to take that fight to the Hill, and that's where our focus will be. So, in short, I think, there are silver linings to everything, and that is the silver lining to the election results of 2024. Thank you.
Scheduled after lunch.
All right, let's go to the comment section. Who wants to speak on some of this, what we just heard here? I know someone's itching for their input right now. Oh yeah, we do have a timer, so Oh yeah, we do have a elders group over there from MHA showing us support. So wave your hand up there. Where they at? Oh, right there. Yep. Z, they said. Hey. Madonna, you want to share some words with us? No? Okay. She said, how about Mabel Ann? All right, here we go. Yeah, for real. You want to share some words?
Okay, hello everyone. I